Thank you for being here with us today. It's great to see all of you. My name is Nathan Hiller, and I'm the Academic Director at the FIU Center for Leadership and also a faculty member in the College of Business in the Department of Management. Today is a special day. Today is the Center's inaugural Worlds Ahead Lecture. And it is our great privilege to welcome Mr. Peter Scher as the inaugural speaker for our inaugural Worlds Ahead Lecture. Will you please help me in welcoming Mr. Peter Scher?
Thank you. As I get set up, thank you, Dr. Hiller. It's great to, actually I should say it's great to be back on campus. You actually mentioned the Global Health Investment Fund. One of the interesting news items this morning, we had, I'm going a little off script here, so excuse me a second, I'll get back to this. Two of the things we've done in the last couple of years is create these new funds, these private investment vehicles to address significant health issues. One was the Global Health Investment Fund, which we did with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and a second one we did a couple of years ago was a fund we did with the UK government to get more private investment into dementia research. And in fact, I was excited just this morning, Bill Gates announced a $50 million investment in that fund. So we're really pleased with that. So Dr. Hiller, thank you. It really is an honor to be here today with all of you. We see so many challenges in our communities and around the world. And so I don't think that an organization can have a more important and compelling mission than yours, than fostering greater leadership and nurturing great leaders. Whether you're a member of the faculty here, whether you're a student working on honing your skills, or someone just looking to gain new insight, leadership is relevant to all of us. And it probably means something different to each of us in this room. A public servant, a guide leading a group of climbers up Mount Everest, an executive leading a business or nonprofit organization. Leadership is positive. It's inspiring. To lead is to act, to set direction. But today, one of the most important qualities of effective leadership is having the ability to collaborate, to work with others in a way that embraces our differences and brings out the best in all of us. We live in this increasingly interconnected world, a world filled with growing fault lines. This kind of collaboration is more important than ever. Our world is changing at a pace few of us can imagine even 10 years ago when you first started this center. So let's start with the good news. As troubling as the news headlines are, the fake ones or otherwise, the world is still a far better place than it was when most of us were born. We have overcome challenges that we thought were insurmountable. Global GDP has more than doubled over the last 15 years. More than 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty just in the last 20 years. Food security is dramatically improving, a major driver of improving human health. The number of undernourished people around the world is falling dramatically. Vaccines have almost entirely eliminated most infectious diseases in many parts of the world. Technological advancements, from the internet to smartphones, have transformed our lives and the way we do business in ways we can never imagine, the way we connect with each other. I will say parenthetically, as the father of 2 sons, sometimes it's for the better, sometimes not so much. But the gains of the last 2 decades are really inspiring. But despite that progress, despite all the advances, we're still failing. We're failing on too many fronts. There are still far too many parts of our society that are not benefiting from that progress. The frustration and the disillusionment that follow have had deep and far-reaching impacts for our society. This was the clearest message out of the elections in the last year in the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and other countries. This growing frustration that far too many people are being left behind. And this is something that ultimately risks undermining the stability of our democracy. This isn't a new problem. In fact, we can go back many years. 2,400 years ago, Aristotle wrote that a strong and confident middle class is essential to political stability. Today, however, we have anything but that. So many of our fellow citizens are feeling left out, they're angry, and they're betrayed by institutions that they believed were there to protect them. And think about where this is coming from. We're losing our middle class. Middle class Americans now comprise less than half of the nation's population. It was 61% in 1970. Middle class incomes have fallen by 4% since 2000 as the cost of living goes up. It's a 9% drop for lower income Americans. Households up and down the income ladder are experiencing tremendous income volatility, and that volatility is on the rise. People are struggling. They're struggling with uncertainty, they're struggling with stagnating wages and soaring costs, and they're losing trust in the institutions to do the right thing. That in the United States alone, confidence in major institutions has fallen dramatically. Too many young people entering the labor market are finding themselves stuck in low-skill, low-wage jobs, or worse, unemployed and out of school. Even those who are graduating from great colleges are finding it often too difficult to enter the job market. A recent study of young workers in New York City found that they are earning 20% less than the generation before them, and are increasingly working in lower income industries, lower wage industries. We do a lot of work around summer youth employment, including here in Miami, and see the difficulty that so many young people have, particularly those in underserved and disadvantaged areas, just finding a job for the summer. Today, there are more than 5.5 million young adults in the United States who are disconnected from both work and school. This is not a good recipe for stability. Meanwhile, more than 6 million jobs go unfilled. Through our efforts, which Dr. Hiller mentioned, to bridge the skills gap, we continue to hear from clients of our bank, from employers, about how they're struggling to find workers with the right set of skills. Nearly 60% of American employers express concern about finding talent, even for entry-level jobs. And this is a global phenomenon. We see this around the world. 1/3 of the world's 1.8 billion young people are not engaged in employment, education, or training. We shouldn't wonder why people are frustrated. While these may not be new problems, they clearly require new solutions. They require new and more collaborative leadership. They require us to think long-term and to help people prepare for the opportunities and challenges of the new global economy. And finally, they require us to think beyond our traditional roles. Government cannot solve these problems, certainly not on its own. And we can't just leave it to the burden to the nonprofit sector and say they'll take care of people who are in need. The business community has to play a much more active role. Business have always been central and vital institutions in society. They generate prosperity and goods and services to meet people's needs and improve their lives. They contribute to building the societies in which we want to live. Think about this. Of the 145 million people who work in the United States today, 125 million of them, more than 85%, work for private enterprise. It's the private sector that generates jobs and economic growth. But how a business operates is something we have to think about. How it's governed, its culture, the integrity of its products, the products and services it offers, how it protects and advances value for its shareholders, the way it treats its employees and cares for its clients and communities. All of this says so much about leadership and says a lot about whether that company is going to be a successful one and around for the long term. Those same attributes that drive business success, I believe, also offer tremendous promise to help solve some of the pressing societal challenges we see today. And this is the fundamental shift we need to make in society. Societal challenges must be seen as business challenges. And business needs to leverage the things that make them successful to help improve and to help grow their communities. This idea that a company needs to strike a balance between its business objectives and the well-being of its communities is really outdated. The future of business is directly linked to the success of our communities. So if any of you are thinking about going into a career in business, I want you to really think about the type of business that you are joining, or any institution. Because when you think about how to grow a business, we know we have to make important investments. We invest in technology. We invest in infrastructure. We invest in our workforce. Critically important investments that may not pay dividends in the next quarter or the next year, but we know will help our companies grow for the long term. We need to think about investments in our communities in the same way. These are long-term investments that will help our companies grow for the long term as well. Wait, my Marco Rubio moment. I just need a little sip of water. I say that with affection. So let me tell you how we think about this at J.P. Morgan Chase. First, we recognize that the single most important asset we have are our employees, our people, and we need to continually invest in them. Starting earlier this year as part of a 3-year plan which we announced last summer in 2016, we began seeing how much wage stagnation there was in this country. We began to raise the minimum salary of our U.S. employees to between $12 and $16.50 an hour. 90% of our employees will now make at least $13.50 an hour exclusive of benefits, which is a value of up to $10,000 or $11,000 more. This is up from $10.15 an hour. The pay increase impacts 18,000 of our bank tellers, customer service representatives, and other employees across the country. We now invest more than $300 million every year in employee and development, in training and development. These are opportunities that are critical to sharpening skills and advancing careers. As a result of this training, more than 40% of our tellers get promoted into higher paying roles within 5 years. But second, we understand that the success of our company is directly linked to the success of our communities. So for us, corporate responsibility has become a strategic business imperative. Recognizing the growing challenges that so many of our communities face, and in an effort to strengthen the impact of our work, about 5 years ago we undertook a fairly thorough review of our philanthropic efforts. We learned that while we were dedicating significant resources, we weren't really moving the needle on pressing issues facing our communities. So we made a strategic decision. We made a strategic shift. We narrowed and refined our approach to focus on areas where J.P. Morgan had unique capabilities, that we had areas where we could fully draw on and leverage the firm's resources, including our data, our relationships, our knowledge of what's happening in different parts of the country, and most important, the talent and expertise of our top employees. So over the past 5 years, we have developed and refined a model that's informed by data and based on evidence about some of the most effective ways we think can drive more inclusive economic growth. Our efforts, again, focus on areas that are aligned with our business expertise, areas where we believe we can have the greatest impact in helping people share more broadly in the rewards of a growing economy. Jobs and skills, small business expansion, financial health, and neighborhood revitalization. We've undertaken significant and long-term global initiatives focused on advancing these pillars of opportunity, bridging the skills gap, which Dr. Hiller talked about, boosting small business growth, particularly growth for minority and other entrepreneurs who don't have access to capital, investing in community development that revitalizes not just urban cores, but surrounding neighborhoods which so often lack investment, and giving households tools and resources to better manage their financial health. We view our work in Detroit as proof of concept. Think about Detroit for a minute. This is a city that in a matter of decades went from being one of America's most prosperous to one of its most distressed. Hundreds of thousands of properties were abandoned. Population fell 63%, dropping from 1.8 million to less than 700,000. The unemployment rate was over 16%. But 4 years ago, after decades of neglect and mismanagement, we saw something different. We saw a community coming together. We saw leaders setting their differences aside and focusing on the things that would truly improve people's lives. We saw the private sector, the nonprofit sector, community groups, all coming together around very specific strategies and plans to create jobs and improve services. Seeing this, our chairman and CEO, Jamie Dimon, told us to go to Detroit and see what we could do to help. So in 2014, after about 6 months of study, we launched our most comprehensive effort to date, leveraging the full range of our firm's resources and expertise to help accelerate Detroit's turnaround. Our initial $100 million investment has now actually grown to $150 million because of its success. By working closely with deeply committed and knowledgeable partners on the ground, our investments are making a real impact. We're equipping Detroit residents with skills for in-demand jobs. We're helping minority small business owners grow and providing capital for housing and retail projects to create livable, inclusive, and more sustainable neighborhoods. We've utilized our data and deployed more than 100 of our top employees from literally all over the world to work with key nonprofits and agencies in Detroit to design and strengthen their programs. We're taking the things that make us successful as a bank and deploying them to help revitalize this really important city. Just last month, I was in Detroit with our partners celebrating the opening of a project called the Co Project. This is the first new construction of an apartment and retail building in one of the neighborhoods, West Village, in literally decades, the first one in decades. Detroit has now become a beacon of hope for what is possible. There's a sense of optimism once again. Young people are now seeing a future for themselves and an opportunity in that city. You may have seen, I hope some of you may have seen Fortune magazine. I don't know that you subscribe to it, but it highlighted just about a month ago our work in Detroit and ranked J.P. Morgan Chase #1 on its list of companies changing the world. If you didn't get a copy, it's probably because we bought up all of them. This is something we're obviously deeply proud of. We put a lot of effort into this, but more important than that, this reinforces this idea, this notion, that the interest of companies and its shareholders can be aligned with the interests of our communities. J.P. Morgan Chase has been part of the Detroit community for 80 years. If Detroit grows, if more people are working, if small businesses are being created, if larger businesses are expanding, if the economy is growing, that's a good thing for Detroit, and it's a good thing for us as well. Our work in Detroit has also provided a host of insights that we're now applying in other cities. Last month, we announced a 3-year, multi-million-dollar commitment to Chicago's underserved neighborhoods on the south and west side, where economic opportunity is increasingly out of reach, and chronic poverty, crime, and violence have all become synonymous. We made a similar commitment to Washington, D.C.'s most underserved areas. Our nation's capital is a perfect example of this challenge we're seeing in too many communities around the world. This is an area that's surrounded by 5 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country, and yet still 1/5 of the district's population still lives in poverty. It's unacceptable. Here in Florida, we've been making significant investments focused on connecting youth to high-quality education and training that lead to well-paying jobs and long-term careers. And as Dr. Hiller mentioned, FIU has been a very important partner to us in this effort. I was here on campus a few years ago meeting with some of the leaders of the education effect, and I was blown away, and I'm actually meeting with the superintendent of schools this afternoon to talk about this program and how it helps create career pathways and internships and other programs to help equip young people with the skills and the training that they need for jobs in this region. We're also making investments in this area to create more opportunities for underserved entrepreneurs to access capital and boost small business growth. Recently, we announced a $500,000 commitment to Grameen America to support its expansion into Miami-Dade County. Grameen's micro-lending program will provide small loans to underserved women entrepreneurs to help them develop entrepreneurial skills and build their businesses. Whether we're talking about Florida or Chicago or Washington, or I can talk about our work in Europe, in Asia, and Latin America, what we see is that the challenges facing our communities are not unique. We're seeing that we can make a real impact by focusing on these key drivers of opportunity. I want to say one other thing about leadership. I'm going to say a couple more things, but I want to say one more thing right now. When we announced our investment in Chicago just recently, the Chicago Tribune published an editorial talking about the role of the private sector in making these kind of commitments, but also pointing out that our investments are going to test, quote unquote, test the idea that a lack of opportunity is often the underlying cause of many other complex issues facing communities. Therefore, driving more inclusive growth has the potential to address other deeply rooted, interconnected issues of chronic poverty, crime, and violence. A lot of companies, and including a few people within my company, said we shouldn't subject ourselves to that kind of test. What if it doesn't work? At some point, leadership involves taking those kinds of risks. Leadership involves a willingness to try things that might fail. When we see people coming together and collaborating around solutions, we need to support those efforts, even knowing that in each of the cities, we will try things that may not work in the pursuit of finding solutions, finding ways to improve people's lives. The risk here for us is not failing this test. The risk here is doing nothing. And that is something we cannot afford. We cannot afford to stay on the sidelines. You can clap, that's okay. Thank you. We cannot afford to stay on the sidelines as problems mount and just get worse. Because underpinning all of this is this idea that a company like J.P. Morgan Chase can make a real difference, can leverage not only its resources, but its core business and expertise to drive the kind of change that we need to improve our society. And we have a responsibility to do that. And it's not a social responsibility, it is a business responsibility. I want to mention one other area that's very relevant these days, particularly to communities living in coastal areas, climate change and the protection of our environment. And I say this particularly in light of the recent weather disasters in this area, and how business can be more active in addressing these challenges, including at a time that the federal government in particular is doing less. While J.P. Morgan Chase has a long-standing commitment to protecting the environment and advancing sustainability, we realize that today's challenges call for an even greater commitment. So this past summer, we committed to source renewable power for 100% of our company's energy needs within the next 3 years. Let me give you a sense of the scale and impact of this kind of commitment. Every time I read it, it kind of amazes me. So J.P. Morgan Chase operates all over the world. We have offices and operations in more than 60 countries, over 5,000 properties, covering nearly 75 million square feet. Think of it this way. You could fit our firm's global operations into 27 Empire State Buildings. So to reduce our environmental impact, we're doing a number of things. We're developing an on-site solar installation at one of our largest buildings and are now in the process of retrofitting 4,500 Chase branches with the world's largest LED lighting installation. For those of you who think light bulbs can't make a difference, let me tell you how it can. We've already installed over 1.5 million new light bulbs, a move that will cut our lighting energy consumption in half. This is the equivalent of taking nearly 27,000 cars off the road. Here in the state of Florida, we have over 400 retail and commercial properties. Our annual energy consumption is equivalent to more than 158,000 barrels of oil. We will bring the carbon impact of this to zero by the end of 2020. We've already retrofitted more than 90% of our 346 branches in Florida. We're also working on developing a new product, small capacity fuel cells that run on natural gas. Essentially, these are mini power plants about the size of a refrigerator. I don't really understand the technology, but I can explain it. These will power up critical systems within bank branches during environmental emergencies. In other words, this product will not only ensure that our branches stay open, but they can be safe havens during natural disasters. Finally, as one of the largest financiers of energy in the world, we committed to facilitate $200 billion in clean financing through 2025. Through this commitment, J.P. Morgan Chase will help scale the impact of sustainability efforts among more than 20,000 corporate and investor clients in the United States and across the world. The size, the scope, the global reach of our firm allows us to take on big challenges and drive progress that few others can. And again, we have a responsibility to do that. But there's no set criteria for what business should do for its communities. Every company, large or small, can bring something unique to the table. It's important to keep in mind, however, that nothing is static. Business must operate within the context of its communities. A fast, ever-changing world requires us to continually assess the needs of our communities and identify the capabilities that we can leverage to address these challenges. I'd like to finish where we started by talking about leadership, talking about several of the things that influenced me during my career. I moved to Washington in the late 70s to attend college. In fact, my resident advisor from freshman year, Pat Morris, is here, and he's agreed that whatever happened freshman year stays that way. Pat is now the community development lead for Wells Fargo down here in Miami, and a great partner. So, Pat, it's great to see you. But when I moved to Washington, I never planned to work on Capitol Hill. But after college, law school, work on some political campaigns, I had the opportunity to become chief of staff to a U.S. senator from Montana named Max Baucus. So this was a guy from Montana and a Jewish lawyer from New York, which was not exactly your typical Capitol Hill combination. When I was interviewing for the job, I decided I should really be honest with the senator, and I reminded him that I had never worked on Capitol Hill, I'd never even been an intern, and knew nothing about Montana. I thought this would take me out of the running. He told me he knew Montana pretty well. His family had been there for about 8 generations and had plenty of people with years of legislative and policy experience. He said, I want someone who has a different background and different set of experiences, he told me. This was a tremendously valuable lesson for me in understanding the importance of bringing people of different backgrounds and different experiences and beliefs and skill sets to create the strongest possible team. Later, as Dr. Hiller mentioned, I had the honor of serving in President Clinton's administration as a U.S. Special Trade Ambassador. I was one of the negotiators on China's entry into the World Trade Organization. Being in that role, you see that no matter where you are from, all problems are local problems. And most people around the world, no matter where they're from or what their background, have pretty similar aspirations, pretty similar hopes and dreams. And you learn quickly how interconnected the world truly is. These 2 experiences were very much on my mind this past summer when my beach reading for the summer was a book called Last Hope Island. It was a book about World War II, and more specifically, how Winston Churchill made England into a haven for people from countries overrun by Hitler and the Nazis. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, France. People in countries with different languages and different cultures that many of the British thought had little to do with them and nothing to offer. But Churchill knew. He knew they were all connected. He knew that to win that war, they needed the skills and the talent and the passion of people from different countries and cultures and backgrounds and experiences. You know the rest of that story. It's a story that resonated with me, and I think holds so much meaning, particularly today, when our national dialogue is so divided, when people on both sides are so quick to denigrate and cast blame, to look for scapegoats. These are the kinds of examples of leadership we need to look towards. But you don't have to read history books to be inspired. What I've seen through the work I've done at J.P. Morgan Chase and throughout my career is that extraordinary things can happen when people set aside their differences, roll up their sleeves, and ask, what can I do to help? The spirit of engagement, of cooperation, and commitment has been essential to the progress we're seeing in Detroit and in so many other places around the country and around the world. If we work together, if we put our differences aside and harness our unique capabilities, we can truly move mountains. I'm grateful for your time today. It has been a real honor. I thank you for listening. Dr. Hiller says that if you're really nice to me and don't ask any hard questions, I can take a few. Or you can ask anything you want. Yes, ma'am. I think there's a mic. Do you want to grab the mic? You're going to say something. It sounds like you're going to say something important. Okay. Oh, wait, here you go. Here's a mic for you.
I do want to thank you through your work through J.P. Morgan to impact low-income communities. Your words that you stated are very profound because with a growing economy and a moving system that we are globally and nationally, it is important that we pay attention to people. And what you're saying is insurmountable of what is needed in areas that are going through so much poverty and low-income struggle. So thank you. As a person coming from a low-income background, coming from inner-city projects, thank you a lot through your work through J.P. Morgan.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think there's a mic coming to you on that side.
didn't know if you were gonna go first. Hey, good morning. I'm very inspired by some of the things that you said today, and I wanted to ask because it was exciting to hear what you said in regards to the public-private partnership in Detroit. And now that you have had that success, is that something that Chase will be able to maybe lead with other right private to move it across the country?
So it's a great question. I would say we can play a really important role. What we can't do is come into communities and say, hey, here we are from Wall Street, we're going to tell you how to fix your community, right? That's something the community has to do. But what we saw, and I talked about this model in Detroit, that people really came to. It was really an extraordinary thing. I mean, Detroit was really an iconic American city, and finally the city decided it was enough, and they elected a new mayor in 2013. And I will say, for a community that had been very divided, including by race issues, this was a white guy who got elected mayor in an 80% African American city, because he said, you know what? I'm going to fix the streetlights. I'm going to get the buses running on time. I'm going to get I'm going to get ambulance service and he just got reelected with 73% of the vote. Okay? Because people just focused on what do we do to make this community better? And you know what? They want to rally around that. There are other places around the world. We saw that, not necessarily citywide. In Chicago, we're not trying to fix all Chicago, but we saw, particularly on the south and west side of Chicago, a lot of important institutions. The University of Chicago, the Obama Foundation just moved in, their businesses moved in, and quite literally in those cases, we can go in and say, what can we do to help? And we don't go in with any preconceived notion, oh, we have this program, and we do have experiences that we've tried in different places. So, for example, we viewed Detroit as a little test lab for problems. So you looked at the blight challenges in Detroit, it was enormous. And our view is if you can fix blight in Detroit, you can probably fix it anywhere. And so the technology that we developed to address some of the blight challenges, we've now taken to 3 cities in Ohio, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And we're actually now deploying it in Houston. It's a mapping project. So in each of these places, we're trying to understand what we can learn. DC is another interesting example. There's a big bridge project that's going up. And we know now that there will be dislocation as a result of that. And for the first time, we have a chance to get in before that. So we're working on some programs, a land trust to buy up land so we can maintain affordable housing. So small business loans, so small business entrepreneurs that might not be able to deal with the spikes in rent and costs can have the kind of financing. We have training programs, so when a big project like that develops, we can train people in the community for those jobs. So to us, the most important thing is, do you have people coming together in the community around a specific strategy? And in those cases, there's a lot we can do. I will tell you, there are a lot of places we go, and my team here drag them along. You may have great institutions, but people are moving in 30 different directions. And there's not a lot in those cases that we can do. But we're willing to get in the game wherever and see what we can do to help. So thank you for the question. I think one here, and then we'll come back here. Is that okay?
Thank you so much for both your leadership and your vision. This has been incredibly helpful. So I've lived in Miami since 1986. My first bank was Barnett, and now I'm with these guys. So the point
second best. It's okay.
Well, the point being, while there have been huge benefits to things going global in terms of business and where they sort of derive their income, it's less about place, right? So my question is, how do you, as a company, then define community? Like the communities that you work in, and as businesses like this get bigger and they're not in place, and as technology makes place irrelevant, in some ways, how do corporations still connect to community and define it for themselves?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and we had this conversation last week in Washington with our head of our consumer bank, because we keep hearing, and Pat sees this as well, is everyone's saying branches are going away, everything's digital. Our view is branches are not going away. We're increasing branches, and we actually view branches, as I think Wells does as well, as being a really important part of the community. People want to be able to touch and feel their bank. They may do a lot of their, Eva has my iPhone. They may do a lot of their banking on their iPhone, but they want to have that branch. And I think we're starting to see branches as part of the community. How do you use those, whether it's in a natural disaster or other things? Some banks are looking at coffee bars in branches. I don't know if you guys have done that. I know Capital One has. But, how do you think about branches and that physical presence being part of those communities? I mean, there are a number of my colleagues here who are bankers. One of the things I think the culture of JP Morgan is encouraging people not just to sit in their offices, trying to get a client to, put more money in the bank, but really being part of the community. I think our clients expect that of us. I mean, in Detroit, interestingly, and, it's interesting, I know the term is often social responsibility. We kind of shy away from it, because I do think this is business responsibility. You look at Detroit, in many ways, we've become kind of the hometown bank. And I think our theory, and I think this is Pat's as well, people want to do business with any institution that they feel reflects their values and their kind of commitment to the community. So it really is a strategic imperative wherever we go to be a part of the dialogue and conversations about how to fix challenges and how to be a positive force in the changes that people are dealing with. Thank you for the question. Yep.
Thank you. My name is Angela Gerardo, and I've had the privilege of working in a private investment vehicle in Colombia for post-conflict and reconstruction for peace. But it's not easy to change the chip of a company, especially in a country like Colombia. How can we do that? How I, as a student, can change a company's chip in order to create corporate responsibility more than the legal limits are enforcing?
It has to start at the top. I mean, look, everything we do, we're a big company. I'll find 50 or 100 people who tell you why you can't do it, including our investment in Detroit. I got a long list of people who told me why we couldn't do this, okay? But I have a CEO who said we're going to do this, right? There are always reasons not to act. And I think it really, if I didn't have a CEO who is this committed to this kind of work, it would be very difficult, because every day, I mean, even the speech I gave, the lawyers had to review to make sure it was okay. I mean, this is the way is he going to say something really stupid? And so you have to, I think one of the things that we are constantly trying to do is kind of kill bureaucracy. Because I think bureaucracy can really stifle innovation, discourage the type of people. The other thing I would say is, it's interesting, you look at a lot of the work I talked about around sustainability. We view this as a business, and we view this as imperative from a number of respects. Our clients expect this of us, and we want our clients to still do business with us. Millennials who we want to attract to come work for us, they want to come work for a company that reflects their values. And so if for no other reason, leading on these issues helps us, recruit the best talent, that's a good business decision. So I would say one of the programs, my friend here actually served on one that we created in Detroit, was when we started this, we realized this goes back to we had to really be on the ground. This was not the type of thing we could just write a check, say good luck and hope for the best. And so we created a program called a service corps, which we literally, and I was a little dubious when we started this, because we went to the business leadership and said, we want to take 10, 12 people at a time out of revenue-generating seats in our company and send them to Detroit for 3 or 4 weeks to work with the nonprofits. And I thought the business were going to say, you have got to blank and be kidding me. I got revenue targets, I got P&L, don't bother me with this stuff. And you know what? It has become one of the most popular programs in the company. And because our employees want to do it, the leadership sees this as leadership development. We're taking 10, 12 people who have never met each other from different parts of the world, we're all part of JP Morgan Chase, and say, go spend 3 weeks in Detroit and figure out how to fix this problem. So we've now actually decided to double this program. So we're going to deploy 200 people a year into these types of functions. And so again, it really is, you have to start at the top, and it's about leadership. And again, I don't think we could do this if our guys thought, well, this is a nice thing to do, or this is PR. That's what corporate responsibility used to be, right? You write some checks to charities, you do a press release, and you don't worry about it. You have to think about this as a fundamental part of your business. How do you build stronger communities? How do you build a stronger economy? How do you attract clients? How do you attract talent? All of this is part of what we do. Here, let me go back and then I'll come up. Is that okay? He tricked you, no mic.
How are you doing? I'm a graduate student here at FIU, and I wanted to thank you, first of all, for your commitment and JP Morgan's commitment to the community. Just a quick question. In light of all the societal challenges that you've mentioned and the role the private sector has to play, what advice, if any, would you have for us, the students of FIU, or any of the students in the country, on what we can do to promote some of the growth opportunities to address these challenges?
So listen, I think the biggest piece of advice I give to young people is, whatever your 10-year plan is, throw it away. Seriously. That's number one. Number two, don't worry about what your parents think. Seriously, I'm not saying totally ignore them. But I have a 20-year-old who's a sophomore in college, and I have a 18-year-old who's a senior in high school. And I actually tell this, that ultimately you got to decide what gives you meaning and purpose in life, right? And you figure out what you like doing, and you find a group of people you like doing it with. Everything. Don't worry about title. Don't worry about. Those are the only things that matter. And I think what I would say is, be open. I mean, as I said in my remarks, I never thought about working on Capitol Hill, and I happened to meet this senator from Montana who I liked, and I was 30 years old at the time, and I was like, well, why not? You got to throw some long balls, seriously. I mean, particularly when you're younger, try different things. And even if you think, okay, maybe I want to go to work for a nonprofit. There's some phenomenal nonprofits in this community doing great work, but their business is doing as well. I mean, we have, if you look at our philanthropy team, many of whom are sitting right here, these are people that I would guess, Courtney Bryan, who just joined us, now is responsible for philanthropy for the entire East Coast. If I had asked her 5 years ago, would she be working for a bank, she probably said, 1 year ago, if I asked her, would she be working for a bank, she probably would have laughed me, right? She said, you're great. If I thought 20 years ago I'd be working for a bank, you might as well have told me I'd be sitting on the moon, okay? So I think the most important thing is be open to different opportunities. Don't talk yourself out of jobs no one offered you. This is the big, we all get in our heads, not you guys, okay, I do, so I won't put this on you. Do we all get in our heads too much on this stuff? Just be out there and like see what's out there and understand what feels right to you, and then go do it. And you know what? If it doesn't work, then go do something else. Don't overthink it. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, hi, my name is Jingyao Kwan. I'm an international student from China, and I'm majoring in business management. I'm a senior. You mentioned you are a negotiator for Chinese business entry, because I know it's really different leadership like style, between U.S. and China. It's really different policy and the law. So what is the biggest challenge you overcame as a leader, as a negotiator?
So, in fact, I was just in China 2 weeks ago, and I had a chance to catch up with my counterpart, who was the Chinese negotiator. I think the biggest challenge on any negotiation is people thinking you're trying to win an argument. Negotiations are not about winning an argument. There's not like a judge sitting above saying, oh, you made the better argument, so you're right. I think the biggest challenge, particularly with China, was understanding that we think there's one guy who's sitting in Beijing who's making all the decisions. There are a lot of, just like there are political pressures on, U.S. leaders, there are political pressures on Chinese leaders. And China had made a decision to join the WTO because they believed, and it was the right decision, that it was in their interest and it would help them open the economy and grow the economy. And the fact that, I don't think it's a coincidence that in the now almost 20 years that China has been a more fulsome part of the global trading system, 1 billion people have come out of poverty in your country. So I think understanding the pressures and the interests of China, and you know what? They weren't that different from ours. Okay, what the Chinese wanted to do, as you know, they want to create jobs. They want to create opportunity. They want to grow the economy. They want to lift people up. All the things I talked about that we need to do in the United States, I think China wants to do that as well. Now, they may get there in different ways than we do, but this is where I think understanding who you're negotiating and what are they trying to achieve, I think those are the keys. And once you do that, you then can figure out how to, a negotiation has to be a win-win. And I think it was. Now, not everyone thinks it was. The current president doesn't think it was. I still think it was. So, Trevor, one more. Go for it.
Good morning. I just wanted to ask, based on your past experience in public service, some points that maybe JP Morgan wasn't able to succeed, maybe some struggles that you guys had before you reached success in communities? That's what it seemed.
We've always been perfect.
Some struggles maybe JP Morgan has had and that you were able to either find solutions or weren't, and how your years in public services helped you in that.
So it's interesting. Are you talking about in the philanthropic space or just as a business? Whatever. I mean, listen, you know what? I would say, too, that you might have heard a couple of years ago we had this little thing called the whale, where we thought we were losing $2 billion. It turned out we lost $6 billion. No one could find it. Here's what I would say, and I think this also goes back to my friend from Columbia in terms of thinking about the kind of companies we work for. How any institution responds to a crisis or a challenge, my friend is going through that now, I think says a lot about what that institution is about. And you know what? I work in an institution with 250,000 people all over the world. I know every day someone's going to be doing something stupid, right? Someone may be doing something unethical. Someone may be doing something illegal, right? But I've worked in law firms, I've worked in government, I've worked in political campaigns. I have not found an institution on the planet that doesn't have that same challenge. I worked in the U.S. Commerce Department, Dr. Hiller said. There were 35,000 people there. Every day, someone's doing something stupid, something unethical, potentially something illegal. How you confront that, I think, is a part of the culture which, to me, is of the essence. And, I was very proud when we faced the whale, our chairman, CEO, stood up and said, this is my responsibility. And we went and we fixed it. One of the things when we do philanthropy, and Courtney and I have talked a lot about this, and this is kind of what I was trying to say, we're going to try things that don't, and I want my people to know, we're going to try things that don't work. Failing is not the crime here. The crime here is sticking with something we know doesn't work. So even in Detroit, when we initially made some small business investments, we realized within about 6-8 months they weren't really hitting the mark, because the problem in Detroit was not small businesses, incubators downtown were investing. It was the fact that people in the neighborhoods, particularly minority entrepreneurs, couldn't get access to capital. And so I said, look, let's not keep riding this horse that's not going anywhere. Let's just shift. And so I think I can probably give you 30 examples of where we haven't gotten it right, and that's okay. And this is, again, I think this goes to leadership and culture. Is it okay to fail? Okay, and I think it is if your purpose isn't trying to get to the right solution that will help people. And so, we've had it we have it in every part of our business every day. And you do your best to stay ahead of it, and I hope that at the end of the day you're working for an institution that net is going to be on the winning end of that, which I think I am. So, Doctor, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Peter, for that thought-provoking and inspiring those words. I think if you are like me, your head is spinning with a lot of different things going on about if you're a student and you're thinking about where am I going to work? What are the kinds of questions I need to be asking of the organizations I might want to work for? What are their values? Are they living it? And is that aligned with what I do? When you are leading, are you leading just to hit a metric, a specific metric that was given to you by your boss? Or are you thinking about the interconnected parts and how you can weave them all together? And I think that's a challenge for all of us as we become and are in positions of leadership, whether formally or informally. So thank you very much for that, Peter. I'd like Dr. Myra Beers to join me on the stage briefly for a moment. Myra is the Director of Strategy at the Center for Leadership. And we would like to present you, Peter, with this award. Peter, on behalf of FIU and the FIU Center for Leadership, it is our honor to present you with this award in recognition of your leadership and J.P. Morgan Chase's leadership in making our community truly worlds ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of FIU and the Center for Leadership, our thanks to all of you for being here today. We hope to see you all again at the next lecture, who will be featuring Tibor Hollow, who is Chairman and President of Florida East Coast Realty and has been a pillar in this community. That will be on Thursday, November 30th, so coming up in just a few weeks at 2 p.m. We encourage you to stay connected with the Center for Leadership. You go to leadfiu.edu and you can find out about all of the things, events and programs that are happening there. Please join us for a reception out in the lobby for a few minutes, and thank you again, Peter, for your words and for joining us here today. Thank you.
Thank you.